Okay, welcome to this short video on how to create and interpret your own personal birth chart. So in order to do this, you will need, of course, your birth chart, which I'm going to explain to you how to do that in a moment. And it might also be useful for you to have a look at the workbook. Inside there is a cheat sheet of the different glyphs, which are the symbols that you will start to get used to when looking at your birth chart. So I'll explain how to do this in just a moment. And both of these links are also down below this video. So the purpose of this, when we're looking at your birth chart or your natal chart, when we're looking, first of all, for where is Chiron situated in your birth chart, we can do it from a number of different ways. The first way will be via the zodiac sign or the zodiacal sign placement, which for everybody doing this course is hopefully Chiron, because this course is designed for women with their Chiron in Aries. So based on this, we can pull certain themes and collective wounding connected to, for example, Chiron in Aries. The other way that we can interpret it is also through the house placement. This typically will show us the life area where the wound may show up. We can also look at the degree of your Chiron, and this can also give us clues around activation, which we will be talking about in our first session together. And then in addition to that, and not essential for this course, even the house placement is not essential. So for example, if you don't know your time of birth, you will most likely be sure that you have Chiron in Aries, but you just won't know which house placement, where your Chiron is, which house your Chiron is placed in. And you wouldn't know the degree, for example. But you can get a tremendous amount just from looking at Chiron in Aries, okay? But if you feel comfortable looking at those things that I've already mentioned, in addition to that, you can also look at other things as well. So for example, we can look at where Chiron is currently transiting in the sky right now in relation to your birth chart. So which house is Chiron currently going over? We can also look at the ruler of Chiron, the planetary ruler of Chiron, and we can have a look at where that is situated in your chart. Now, just so you know, the planetary ruler of Chiron is Mars. And so wherever Mars is in your chart, whichever sign it's in and whichever house it's in, also gives you more information. And then this is a little bit more advanced, but we can look at aspects. So we can look at the angle of Chiron to other parts of your natal chart. And so I'll show you an example of this in just a moment. And then finally, and there's a separate mini course on this, we can also look at your galactic alignments. So we can run a chart and look at the fixed stars that are in alignment to your Chiron. And this then gives us some indication of possible collective wounds from past lives, in connection to other galaxies, in connection to missions that we might be here for. And so there's a whole separate section on that if that does interest you. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to go to the website that I've provided below. And let me just Show my screen again. So you can use any website that generates free birth charts. There's many, many different ones out there. I've chosen this one, astro.com, because it just creates a simple birth chart, and there's some features in this which are quite useful for you, particularly if you're new to astrology. So from this, so from their landing page, or this is not actually their landing page, but if you were on their landing page, you'll see that, let me just see if I can go back to the main one. No. So the link below will take you directly to this page, which is where they house their free charts. And you can choose either this first one, create a simple birth chart, or if you already have done this many times before, you're familiar with this, you can choose extended chart selection. And in this one, you can actually choose aspects to Chiron, so it highlights those relationships to Chiron. But I would just go with this one, the create a simple birth chart. Once you click on this, it's going to ask you for your birth details. And once you put those in, and it gives you your chart, you're just going to click on it, and then it will expand open into another page, so it's much bigger for you. And now from here, we can start to analyze this in more detail. So if we look at this one first, this is not my birth chart, it's a variation of my birth chart. To show you what it is that you're looking for. So the first thing that you'll notice when you look at this, if you've never looked at one before, when you look at your natal chart or your birth chart, you'll see that we have this wheel, and they look slightly different in different programs that you might use, but there is a lot of similarity. Generally, you will see the zodiac signs on the outside, and you'll see the numbers in the center, which represent the houses. And so if you're not familiar with the zodiac symbols, you may probably just know your own sun sign. I've given you a cheat sheet inside the workbook, so you can have a look. But generally they go in order of the zodiac signs. And so typically we start with Aries. So we can see here, Aries has the symbol of the ram, the horns. And then if we move around, you'll see here, then we go into Taurus, which is the bull. And then from Taurus, we go into Gemini, the twins. And then moving into Cancer, the crab, going into Leo, the lion, moving down into Virgo. So this symbol here represents Virgo, which is often like the maiden, the water carrier. Libra, the scales. Scorpio, moving down into Sagittarius, presented by the arrow. After Sagittarius, moving into Capricorn, the sea goat, and Aquarius, the water carrier. And then here you'll see Pisces, the fish, the two fish. Okay, and then back to Aries. So this represents the 12 zodiac signs, the 12 constellations, which were in the sky when you were born. Now, this system that I've shown you is automatically defaults to Placidus house system. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. There are many, many different house systems, but Placidus is one of the most commonly used. So either people will use, generally most people will tend to use either Placidus or whole house. It does change the structure of the houses in some cases. And if you use completely different house system, it can really change the placement of things in your chart. So completely up to you. If you're used to using a particular house system, please feel free to continue to use that house system. If you haven't used one before, as I said, this one will default to Placidus, but just make sure then once you've used Placidus in this sense, if you now go and pull your chart somewhere else, or if you ask ChatGPT to tell you, it may use a completely different house system and then it can get confusing. So make sure you're always asking them for Placidus, just so it doesn't, or just be aware if you use a different one. So with the Placidus house system, you'll see that all the houses are not necessarily equal, because this is pretty much when you were born, how the different constellations are in the sky. You'll see here there is a line running through the middle. This is the ascendant. So pretty much think about this as in it's the horizon at the time of your birth, and the AC stands for the ascendant or the rising sign. Okay, so you'll see up here the ascendant or rising sign for this chart is Virgo, and that's different to the sun sign. Okay, so when you look at yours, you should first of all recognize your sun sign, because most people are familiar with their sun sign. That's how we read our horoscopes. That's what we understand by, yeah, what horoscope are you? What zodiac sign are you? It's your sun sign. Okay. So this is where the sun is placed at the time of birth. So the sun and the moon are pretty easy to identify. So you'll see here that now that in the wheel here, we also have different planets and symbols. So the sun is represented just here by the circle with the small circle in the middle. So that's sun. And we can see that it's in Libra, this symbol. Here is Libra. So sun is in Libra. Okay. We can see that the ascendant is in the sign of Virgo, and we can see the moon up here is in the sign of Gemini. Okay, you may not know all of those symbols yet, but you can use your cheat sheet to identify them. So you might want to do that first of all in your own chart, just to make sure you can also use it as a way to double check that you've done it correctly by looking at what is your sun sign and making sure that's the zodiac sign that you are familiar with. Okay. So we now know that we have these different zodiac signs, and then we've got the different houses, which basically represent different life areas. And so the zodiac sign will change the flavor of that life area. And of course, this planet, all these different planets here, will also carry the themes of that zodiac sign. So what you're looking for next is your Chiron placement, which looks like a little key we saw before. And so the Chiron here, you can see, is located in the 8th house, and it's very, very close to Taurus. It's literally 1 degree away, but it is in the sign of Aries. And how do I know that? Well, if I look across at this table here, we can check and we can see right at the bottom there, Chiron, it says little key symbol, Chiron is at 29 degrees of Aries. And so we see here the big number 29 is how many degrees of Aries. Okay, and there's 30 degrees to each zodiac sign. So we know that in this case, it's very, very close to the end of Aries and close to Taurus. The difference in this one, and you may have it in yours, you'll see there's a tiny little R, letter R, next to the Chiron symbol. This just means retrograde. It means it's going backwards. So even though it's 29 degrees close to going into the next zodiac sign of Taurus, because now it's going backwards, retrograde, it's going back on itself, back to Aries, back into Aries. So once you've identified your Chiron, it should be in Aries, hopefully. That's the first thing. You can have a look and see if it's in retrograde or not. And then the next thing that you want to do is to identify the degrees. So in this case, it's the large number I mentioned before, 29, and we can see here 29. So you would write this down. So I would say my Chiron is in Aries and it's at 29 degrees of Aries. The next thing you can do is have a look what house it's in. And to look at that, we would just see the number of this section. And we can see that it is in the 8th house. So I would write this down as well. This means that whatever the 8th house represents, it's where potentially my Chiron wounds may be activated the most in around that life area. So the different houses we'll talk about in later weeks, but they each stand for different areas of your life. For example, 2nd house is more about your money, your resources. 3rd house might be connected to siblings. 4th is family. 7th is relationships and marriages, etc., etc. Once you've identified the house that your Chiron is in, we can also look to see where the planetary ruler of Chiron is. So the planetary ruler of Chiron is Mars. Okay, Mars is the planet that's associated with Chiron. With Chiron, with Aries. So because Chiron's in Aries, then the planetary ruler of Chiron will be Mars. And so we can have a look now to see where Mars is located in the chart. And we can see down here and through this little cheat sheet on the side here, Mars is a symbol of an oval with a little arrow on the top right. So Mars, it tells me, is 3 degrees of Scorpio. Okay, and so I can see down here, it's right at the beginning of moving through the sign of Scorpio. So it's 3 degrees of Scorpio. And it's sitting in the 2nd house. So the 2nd house might also be of significance to me when I start to learn about the different houses and what the significance of Chiron is by house. And pretty much that's all you need to know and all you need to do, really, for the first week when you come along. We're really mainly going to focus on Chiron in Aries. We won't even talk about the houses too much at all in the first week. That will be in a later week, but at least then you already are familiar and you know whereabouts it is. I'll also just point out a few other things in this chart, and particularly then it might just be so that it makes sense to you, or it might just be that you have an interest in understanding it. So you'll see down the bottom here, there is a series, a table with squares, and inside here you'll see some symbols. Now these represent aspects or angles, and these are important in astrology. So when we look at Chiron, there will be certain things, certain aspects that Chiron has to other planets that may be of significance. So we can do this literally just by using our eye. And one of the easiest ones to look at is what is opposite. What is opposite Chiron? Okay. And so when we look opposite Chiron, we can see here that there are a few different things sitting there and seem to be opposite. And this will also be significant. Things that are in opposition tend to provide challenges. And now, as we come into our second part of our life, though, these challenges will become easier and smoother potentially. But definitely in the earlier part of life, it could be that they have provided challenges in that house area. How can we double check that they are actually opposition, in opposition? Well, the symbol you can see here, there's a little red, like a figure of 8. This stands for opposite. So as we find Chiron and we move across, we're looking for anything that has that. And you can see there are 4 things. So it's saying the Sun, Mars, Uranus, that's that little symbol there. And the last one is true node or north node, okay? Basically, these are these 4 things. It's identifying them as all being in opposition, okay? And this is, as well, you can see when we look at the degrees, they are quite close. They look far apart, but like true node is 3 degrees, Mars is 3 degrees, Uranus is 6 degrees, so they're all pretty much on top of each other, even though they look spread out. From a degree point of view, they're extremely close to each other, and they are in opposition to Chiron. So this second house is quite significant and may have been activated with certain things because of that placement opposite to Chiron. The other things that you can look for are whether you've got any squares. And so you would look across here. In this chart, there are no squares to Chiron, but you can see there are squares elsewhere in the chart. Okay, so a square literally is represented by a red square. Squares can also provide challenges to you. So if you have anything that is square to Chiron, you can jot that down as well. And the other things that could be of interest are the blue symbols, the blue triangle, and the blue star. The blue triangle means trine, and the blue star means sextile. And these are all in your little cheat sheet in your workbook as well. So if you have anything that is showing, and on this one, there is one here, there's a blue star to the moon. So that means that the Chiron in this one is sextile to the moon. And that actually can be a positive placement. It can bring through some gifts and positive things in times of need. So that's the way that you can check to see whether you have, strong, anything that's in aspect to your Chiron. You'll notice that there are some other symbols on here, green. These are going into more minute aspect, and for the purpose of this, we won't go into those. Other than that, that is basically all you really need to know for now. I'll show you how this can look on some other examples. So on this one here, we can see that the Chiron is 28 degrees of Aries. So also at the very end, and also a little bit difficult to see there, but in retrograde. And we can check here, Chiron is 28 degrees of Aries, and the R represents retrograde. It's in the 11th house, okay? The 11th house, which is the house of friendships and sort of more collective endeavors. And we can see that when we look here, we're looking for what is opposite. There are two things opposite. So it's opposite to Uranus, the planet Uranus, and it also seems to be opposite to true node or north node, which is significant as well. If you do have a true node opposite to your Chiron, please make a note of that. True node or north node is like our destiny. And there's a tail end to that, which is south node, which actually doesn't show on this on these birth charts using the astro.com. And that's the only, I would say, flaw, downside in the basic one that we're running here, because your south node, then, if your true node or north node is opposite your Chiron, it means that your south node is right next to your Chiron, conjunct to your Chiron. And if you have this placement, it's significant because south node represents your past. It represents karma. It can represent your gifts. It can represent, lots of things from your past that you're bringing through with you into this life. And if it's right next to your Chiron, then this is significant. Okay. We can also see the Mars here, which is the planetary ruler of Chiron in this case, is in the 5th house. So the 5th house has a lot going on in it. It's not only got some things that are strongly in opposition to Chiron, it also has the planetary ruler of Chiron. So 5th house, which represents the creative expression, can represent things like children, as well as just entertainment in general, having fun, but definitely a creative expression. And now if I just show you one more example, this one also is showing 29 degrees of Aries, also retrograde, and this time in the 12th house. Okay, 12th house. And when we look at where the planetary ruler is of Mars, we can see it's here in the 6th house, in Scorpio. And then we can check to see what is opposite. And we can see here as well, it is opposite the true node, Uranus, and also Mercury. So true node, you can see Mercury there, and Uranus are all opposite. And they're all in the 6th house, which is the house of work, routine, health, and fitness. So there may be some activation there. So later on, not in the first couple of weeks, unless you're already quite familiar with this and you feel advanced, then you can go steps ahead. But probably around week 3, You can listen to the video on the houses, and you can uncover more about the placement based on the house 12 in this case, but also I'd be looking at house 6, and I'd also be looking to see if there is any other anything else that's in aspect. So really looking at just red or blue, which in this particular case, there isn't anything else other than those 3 conjunct. So that would be the main thing that I would focus on, as well as the placement of Mars, which also is in the 6th house. So I hope that was useful to you in identifying, creating your birth chart, and then interpreting your birth chart. And if you have any questions at all, please ask away in the main community. If you are not sure of your birth time and you would like to have me see whether I can work with you to uncover your birth time, there is an option to purchase that. So I would be using your Akashic records, also using a pendulum to tap into your soul to then try to discover your time of birth as accurately as possible. And then this will help to give you'll know straight away then, because once we start to uncover more about the placement and the houses, you'll know whether that rings true to you or not. If you have any other questions, feel free to let me know, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So after you've done this, then you are ready to come along to the first live session. So I look forward to meeting you all there. See you soon.